All right. Thank y'all so much for having me this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm always reminded at what a small world it is. So Bruce came up to me earlier and was like, did I meet you in a hot tub at a ski resort a couple of years ago? Yes, we did. And so it's always, you never know when it's going to come back around and you meet people. That's what's, I think, being great about being from the South. You always make friends wherever you go. So it's good seeing you again. My behind the fence neighbor is also here, which we just met. I know, right? So it's always great to come in and talk to folks about what I'm doing because I'm so passionate about it. I also wanted to take a moment and introduce Sean Malone. He's the president of the Dix Park Conservancy, who is our philanthropic partner supporting the park development effort. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, happy to be here. One of the really amazing things about this project is the reason that it is so important that we're doing the Dix Park effort today is that Raleigh continues to grow and change. I think we all experience that. Perhaps you experienced that on your drive-in this morning, that there are people moving to this community for a variety of reasons every day, every hour. And so we know that Wake County, Raleigh, this triangle region will continue to grow and change. The ability to preserve a green space in the heart of our community, I think is a really strong testament to the future of this community to be a livable, workable, economically successful place. You know, what's really fascinating is that parks of this size were created in the 19th century. So if you think about Central Park in New York, Frederick Law Olmsted, late 1800s, or Forest Park in St. Louis, that also in the late 1800s, we basically have an opportunity today that hasn't been seen in about 150 years, which is pretty exciting. It also is we have a lot of work to do on that. I love this example or this exhibit because Dorothea Dix Park is basically the same size as the original downtown grid of Raleigh. So we're creating a new green center less than a mile and a half from the state capitol building. And that's pretty exciting for the future of our community. So a couple of years ago, the city of Raleigh purchased the property from the state of North Carolina, 307.9 acres, 85 structures totaling 1.2 million square feet of building space are out there. And so one of our big challenges is what are we going to do with all that acreage, all that land? And that's what the master plan is all about. Something that's very near and dear to my heart is that making sure that everyone, regardless of background or interest or political affiliation, feels like this is their park. So I welcome you to be a part of it. I want to hear your ideas, your concerns, your thoughts about the future of Dix Park, but it is only when we invite everyone to the table to talk about the future of Dix Park that I think we'll be successful. And the other thing is, you know, we are doing this for our generation, but it is really for our children and our grandchildren that this park will be something transformative for their lives. So I mentioned the public-private partnership. What's really unique about this project right now is that we're starting from the beginning with a 501c3 that is supporting us in a number of different ways. So they're supporting us by raising private dollars to pay for example, the master plan. They're supporting us by raising private dollars to do all the events and programs we have at the park. They're also supporting us in helping build community excitement and engagement about the planning process. Most public-private partnerships come into fruition, especially around parks, when there's an issue. So for example, Bryant Park in New York was known as Needle Park. It needed to be cleaned up. A conservancy was formed to help clean up that park. We don't have an issue like that right now. We're starting together so that both the private side and the public side will work on the creation of the future of Dix Park. So I'm really grateful for that partnership in this effort. One of the really exciting things for me about this job has been learning about the history and the legacy of the land. It's so rich. There are so many different layers. And I kind of quickly just want to share 300 years of history with you. And we'll be happy to answer any questions. So yes, this area of Raleigh was inhabited by the Tuscarora Indians. And then it was settled in the early 1700s by the Hunter family. Theophilus Hunter Sr. was the patriarch. He moved his family here from Johnson County in the early 1700s, built a very modest 2-room plantation house, what is now referred to as the Spring Hill House. His son, Theophilus Hunter Jr., built the structure that sits today on the NC State portion of the property. But this plantation was one of the larger operations in this area of Wake County. Theophilus Hunter Sr. is a notable person in our history. He was Wake County's first tax assessor. He was in the colonial militia. He was one of the original surveyors for Wake County, so lots of history on the property itself. It also was the place where enslaved people worked. So if we look at the wills of Theophilus Hunter Sr. and Jr., they willed both people and property to their heirs. So understanding the histories of this land and how we respect those histories in the future of the park is something that we're very mindful of. In the early 1800s, a woman by the name of Dorothea Dix actually started campaigning legislators to establish mental health hospitals. She first did this in the Northeast. She was born in Maine in 1802, moved to Massachusetts, and was walking around the Cambridge Women's Prison. She was teaching Sunday school, walking around the Cambridge Women's Prison and saw a woman shivering in her cell. She turned to the warden and said, "Warden, why is there no fire to keep that woman warm?" And the warden replied, "That woman is insane, she can't feel cold." So this really catalyzed Dorothea Dix's interest in helping people with mental health issues. She first came to North Carolina in 1848, and basically what she would do is she would go around and survey the jails and poorhouses and document the conditions of people living in those areas. She submitted reports to General Assemblies all across the nation. She did that here in North Carolina. At first they were like, "Thank you, ma'am, from the North. We're doing okay down here in North Carolina. We appreciate your work." She then befriended the wife of a state senator, nursed that state senator's wife to the end of her life. On her deathbed, Louisa Dobbins implored her husband, Senator James Dobbins, to be Dorothea Dix's advocate at the General Assembly. He did that. Then the state allocated the money to purchase the land for the establishment of the state's first mental health hospital in 1850. The hospital opened in 1856 and was designed by a man named A.J. Davis. So really interesting history. Dorothea Dix actually never came back to North Carolina. She lived out her life in New Jersey. She's notable for establishing 32 different mental health hospitals in the United States. Was also superintendent of nurses for the Union Army during the Civil War, which is an interesting piece of history. The Dix campus also has during the Civil War, this was the Dix Hospital. These were the Confederate embankments around the city of Raleigh. April 13th, 1865, there's record of 16,000 Union troops camped at Dix Hill. This was part of Sherman's Carolina campaign. Sherman got on a train to go negotiate peace in Durham, and then Lincoln was assassinated 2 days later. The troops that were encamped here get word that Lincoln has been assassinated and start to march down Dix Hill towards the Capitol with the intent of burning the Capitol down. Then a man by the name of General John Logan, a Union general, turned his artillery on his own troops at the banks of the Rocky Branch Creek at the base of Dix Hill, stopping the assault of Raleigh, April 17, 1865. So just another interesting layer of history on this campus. We're probably all most familiar with its most recent history, which is it operating as the state's first mental health hospital, also the largest mental health hospital. Very similar to national trends, the hospital had a working farm operation. The idea of putting people to work, giving them a purpose, getting them outside, actually had therapeutic qualities. So there was, I've had a lot of people I've taken on tours that remember when cows roamed the property or say, "Oh, I grew up right next to the hog farm that was on the Dix Hospital property." So this was something that was very key in Dorothea Dix's philosophy about using work as a therapy, and was not unique to just North Carolina. You probably are all very familiar that during the second Hunt and Martin administration, a majority of the Dix Hospital farm property was transferred to NC State for the establishment of Centennial Campus. So all of Centennial Campus, Lake Raleigh, is former Dix Hospital farmland and is now obviously the Hunt Library and all of the activity that's going on at NC State. Similarly, the Department of Agriculture received a transfer of land, and it's where they relocated the State Farmers Market. All of that was former Dix Hospital farmland. In the early 2000s, the state did a feasibility study, basically determined that the existing Dix Hospital was not serving the needs of their patients. They had three options. They could rebuild a new facility on the Dix property, build a new facility in Butner, or they were also looking at a site, I think, in Chatham County. They decided to build a smaller facility in Butner, North Carolina. The last patients left the Dorothea Dix Hospital in 2012, and today it remains the Department of Health and Human Services administrative headquarters. So about 2,000 employees go to work there every day. The city leases those buildings back to the state of North Carolina, and they have about 7.5 years left on their lease. So the lease term ends in 2025. One of the things that is the big part of my job is to think about the future of this land. So we're right now in a master plan phase, and we've hired a team out of Brooklyn, New York, Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, to help us in this effort. Michael, about a month after we chose the MBVNA team, this article in Art in America magazine came out that basically referred to Michael as the Frederick Law Olmsted. That's the guy who designed Central Park that the 21st century needs. So we felt pretty good in our choice. They do transformational work all across the country. So the work that they did on 7 dilapidated industrial piers in Brooklyn is now one of Brooklyn, New York's most visited parks. And there you see an aerial of Brooklyn Bridge Park. They are working right now on reconstruction of the City River Arch grounds in St. Louis and the historic Arch property. They did the George W. Bush Presidential Center and also recently won the Obama Presidential Center work. So they're a great group. They've been down this road before, right? So they have taken cities through this process that have resulted in these amazing public spaces, civic spaces for communities. So we are right in the middle of the planning process. We expect it to last until early spring 2019, so February, March 2019. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to deliver is not only a vision for the future of Dix Park, but also a roadmap how to get there. And I'll talk a little bit about what those components are. I would love all of you. Of course, I would not be a planner if I did not throw some diagram on the screen. But where we are right now in the planning process is right here, right before our 3rd large community meeting on June 13th. And I have some posters here if anyone's interested in attending. Each of our community meetings are open forums. We record them all. We try to get as many people in the door that is interested in the future of Dix Park, because it is only through community engagement that we will accomplish what we set out to. And we also are doing a lot of other things. So not only are we having these big forums, we're going out to the community. So we've been at most of the festivals in town. We had this really creative event at Emerge, which is a new art venue downtown. So really trying to take the planning process out to the community, because we know not everyone wants to spend a Thursday night in a gymnasium with a bunch of planners talking about the future of Dix Park. So I thought I'd share a couple of the initial ideas that are coming out, and then we'll open it up to questions from y'all. So how many of y'all have been out to the property since the city of Raleigh purchased it? A few folks, great. One of the spaces that everyone thinks is Dix Park is the large field there. It's about 53 acres. We refer to it as the big field. It's where everyone goes and flies their model airplanes or drones. One of the ideas that is coming out right now is how do we actually work to extend that green space? We did secure an easement along the Governor Moorhead School to create a bridge or some sort of access over Western Boulevard, so we don't have kids playing Frogger unnecessarily across Western Boulevard. They can safely go from Pullen Park to Dix Park in the future. We also had a really positive meeting with the Commissioner of Agriculture a couple of weeks ago. The idea being that we can have the world's, I apologize, the allergies got me this weekend, the world's best farmers market in the nation's newest park. So imagine being able to go and get a picnic basket with your family, take that picnic basket to the park and have a great day. And so we're excited about working with the Department of Agriculture on the integration of the State Farmers Market into the park. And the example that they always look to is Prospect Park in New York, where it has this 1-mile meadow of green space. Another idea that is coming out right now is there's a creek along Western Boulevard. Today, it's not the nicest creek. It's been very channelized over time. Western Boulevard kind of pushed it in. And so one idea is to really open it up, create a big natural floodplain that would provide stormwater benefits, and then create, excuse me, some pedestrian, walking paths, biking paths, so that people could actually, if they wanted to, get down into the creek, but also have a really nice experience where they don't feel like Western Boulevard traffic's rushing right beside them. So that's another idea. We're working with the Department of Environmental Quality on this because it would require some removal of the old landfill that's there. And so that's a fairly big idea to think about actually removing some landfill and moving it to a secure site. but something that I think would be really great for the future of the park. And they're doing this kind of work right now in Austin, Texas with the Waller Creek project. The other really interesting thing is, what are we going to do with all those buildings? 85 buildings, 1.2 million square feet. One of the interesting things is in the report to the legislature of commissioners, when the state purchased the land, they wrote, "This location has a commanding view of the city and is believed to be perfectly healthy." 1850 or 2018, I feel like that still holds true today. And we have this amazing opportunity to create this civic space, this green space that has a commanding view of the city and is perfectly healthy. So with the buildings, this is what the hospital looked like back in the day before the large pavilion was replaced by the tower that's there today. So how do we selectively potentially edit some of those buildings, take some buildings out to create a nice urban-rural threshold? So we know some people, all they want to do is come out, sit under an oak tree, and get away from the hustle and bustle of the city in a park. But we also know that there might be some kids that want to play in water or play pickleball. And so how do we have both of those things in the future of the park? That's really this idea of restoring the urban and rural threshold to the city. And so, yes, we're going to have these green open spaces where it's very much country-like, bucolic, pastoral, but then we also want to have some fun stuff to do. So it's going to be this balance between reflective, restorative, active uses in the park. We know that people are going to have to get there. This campus was intentionally kind of segregated from the general population. It was a mental health hospital. So how do we kind of break down those perceived and real barriers to it being a park of the future? And a lot of the ways we do that is through transit. It's through bike and pedestrian access. And it's also, for the near term, at least, parking. We know people are going to need to drive to get to the park. So how do we accomplish all of those things? And these are just some initial ideas that we've been working with Go Raleigh Transit and the Wolf Line on about serving the Dix Park area with bus. And this is the idea right now about parking. So the property is so big, right? Like you would drive to the areas that you would want to go to, but we also don't want to create a parking lot park. And so how do we balance those two needs between having parking, having enough parking so people can get there and enjoy it, but not having too much parking? The other piece is, Raleigh has had this amazing system of greenways and bikeways that started in the 70s. How does the Dix Park system connect into, for example, Rocky Branch Creek, Walnut Creek, and all the existing the existing regional greenway network? Then this is what everyone wants to talk about, and we're not quite there yet, but what are we going to do when we get there? So is it playing in water? Is it basketball or some arts or entertainment venue? I get about 25 emails a week just with ideas about the future of Dix Park. It's everything from Gaelic football to ultimate frisbee to arts to a amphitheater. So all of those ideas, we're first going to think about what does Raleigh need? What does the Research Triangle need? What does the state need? And what is the Dix property uniquely positioned to provide in terms of amenities and services to the public with the future of Dix Park? So I'm going to stop talking because I think it's probably painful to hear me talk right now and answer any questions you have. Everything that we're doing, we're putting on our website, dixpark.org, so please feel free to go there and share your ideas. Please join us at the June 13th community meeting. I did bring some posters in case any of you have a place to put those up at your work, church, or home. And then we're doing a lot of fun stuff. So this past weekend, we had 3,000 people at the park, and they were basically looking at this neon art installation that we did. So from art to, we had a pop-up dog park where 2,500 people and their furry friends showed up to enjoy a day at the park. So we're just trying to do a lot of different things with the support of the Conservancy to bring people to this space. Because I think once you get there, you realize the potential this has to have a transformative impact on our community. And I welcome all of you to be a part of it. So I'll stop talking and answer any questions that y'all may have about the planning process, the future of the park, the things that we're doing today, anything at all.